going through. It's the kind of person we'd like to have to fight for us and to. I just think he'd be great for what he's going for.
I like your speech. Short, right to the point.
I'd now like to invite Mr. Grady to the podium to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. Guess you all know who I am. A few minutes ago I was talking to Jake and he said, would you like to say a few words? And I said, well, if you had told me a while ago I could have written an epistle about you. But you all know that I was the first woman to see Jake naked.
Oh, yeah. I gave him a slap on the rear end and he hollered so loud. I said, you'll make the best politician that ever lived. Now, and he has proven himself. We are very proud of Jake, being from Blackville here. We love him dearly, and we want him to do well. They say because you're young, you're too young to go into politics or this and that. Well, they're not. We need the young people today. They have so much more privileges than we had. Back in my day, we didn't even have radio when we were going to school. So just think of the difference in the technology today. Jake is like a dog with a bone. When he gets something on his mind, he finishes up, you know that he's going to do well for the people. And so I've always been proud of him, and I think, just think how proud we'd be for to say, here's the next premier of New Brunswick.
Thank you, Lois. Now I'd like to welcome Jake Stewart to the podium. As a member of the legislature since 2010, he currently serves as the MLA for Southwest Miramichi Bay d'Avin area and serves as the official opposition critic for the Department of Energy and Mines, as well as for Aboriginal Affairs. He's also a member of the Standing Committee for Economic Policy. Everyone, Jake Stewart.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Before we get into the main part of today, I'd like to tell you a little bit about where we are. Blackville was named by a man by the name of William Black, a loyalist. He was the third or fourth mayor of St. John history. He named this place after himself. in around 200 plus years ago. I often, as a child, felt that Blackville got its name from black flies. I was convinced of it. And I remember being a little boy and saying, you know, there aren't any black people here. And there aren't anybody with the last name Black. It's got to be black flies. Lo and behold, it was the former mayor way back in the 1830s who came here and named it. He was also the governor or commander-in-chief, what we call premier today. Great story. This area where we are used to be a barkyard. It was a huge pile of 8 or 9 acres of sawdust. Wasn't overly appealing. It had a railroad running through it, and we turned what used to be mills way back, a barkyard, into one of the most beautiful parks in New Brunswick. I would like to speak, my wife Shannon cannot be with us today, nor can my youngest child, Meadow Rose. Meadow is in daycare in Douglastown, and my wife is a school teacher in Nigawak, and she takes her job very seriously, and she would have liked to have been here with me, but you know, she has an important job, she takes it seriously, and she had to be at work today. I'd like to also thank my colleagues, MLA Ted Fleming, MLA Carl Urquhart, MLA Bill Oliver, MLA Stewart Fairgrieve, former minister, and MLA Robert Trevors. And I also see my good friend here sitting in the front, former MLA Doc Parrott. Thank you for being here. I'm also missing a very important person here today, and if there's anyone I'm missing, I'm sorry, I must not have seen you. MLA and my candidate that's also going to be at the convention with us, and very good friend of mine, MLA Brian MacDonald. My friends, my fellow New Brunswickers, I'm pleased to announce that I'm offering for the leadership of the Progressive Conservative Party in New Brunswick. Mes amis, mes collègues de Nouveau-Brunswick, je suis heureux d'annoncer que je me propose comme candidate à la direction du Parti Nouveau-Brunswick, le Progressive Conservateur. Everywhere I go in New Brunswick, I hear that both major parties are the same. I hear that governments are all the same, and the politicians won't make the tough decisions. I hear Liberals and Conservatives are the same. I hear the system is broken, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. Apart from tinkering on this or that program or policy, both parties have been committed to the status quo and maintaining the status quo. This is what I hear in the coffee shops, at the baseball parks, at the soccer fields, at the hockey rinks, at the Circle K, at Tim Hortons, everywhere. I hear this everywhere I go. I've been a member of the legislature for almost 6 years now, and at times I've been frustrated, even appalled, by the lack of meaningful action on so many files. Politicians are people too, and it is a difficult job, but New Brunswick cannot keep the status quo. It's not working. The big challenges and tough decisions have been avoided, swept under the rug and carpet, only to be left to be faced by our children and grandchildren. This cannot continue. We cannot keep saddling the next government with the promises made a month before the election and saddling all of the children of New Brunswick with these issues in the future. The healthcare budget alone could swallow the entire New Brunswick budget in a little more than a decade. It's a very scary thought when you think of bridges and roads and education and so much more. We can't ignore them anymore. Tough decisions have to be made, and I will make them. What are the tough decisions? Alors, quelles sont ces décisions difficiles? Fostering positive relations between our cultural and linguistic communities, addressing our fiscal problems with action, creating the conditions for businesses to grow and invest and thrive and allow the businesses to create the jobs, and increasing the effectiveness of our education system, modernizing and making healthcare system responsive and focused on the patient needs and their outcomes. Almost 70 years ago, a woman of color by the name of Rosa Parks, living in Alabama, took a seat on a public bus. It became known as the Equal Rights Movement in the United States, or civil rights, as most of us remember it or learned about it. This was the beginning of a revolution to bring fairness, equality, and harmony for all people. In that same spirit, 2 decades later, New Brunswick proclaimed the Official Languages Act. Its goal was to provide New Brunswickers services in both official languages. At the time this was brought in, Premier Richard Hatfield, after both finalizing all of what Louis Robichaud put in place, Hatfield didn't even change a comma in that legislation. And do you know why? Because it was working at the time. It was working in the 70s. It was working in the 80s. It's so important if we are to live together as fair-minded New Brunswickers. Because back then, the vision understood at the time was that we need to foster harmony and mutual respect among all peoples in our province. La vision comprise à l'époque était de favoriser l'harmonie et le respect mutuel. Over the years that followed its launch came a series of regulations, policies, and other initiatives put in place to fulfill this vision of linguistic harmony and fairness in New Brunswick. And I'm inspired by that. That happened here in the 60s through the 70s. We were following a much less physical action here in New Brunswick than they had in the United States. It can't be a direct comparison, but all over North America there was issues and measures were being put in place to promote equality throughout North America, and New Brunswick included. My goal is inspired by the vision of equal opportunity, the program of the 1960s that brought New Brunswickers together and fostered economic opportunities in every part of the province. Though I represent the PC party, it's not a depressing moment to acknowledge when another party once had a good decision. That was a good decision. And I'm sure at the time it was revolutionary, it may be controversial, but it simply meant that everybody would have an equal opportunity in life. Who could ever disagree with it? I am also inspired by the vision of the Official Languages Act, an act that was born in the same decade and aspired to bring our linguistic communities together so that all people and cultures that make of our province, les Acadiens, les Bréons, the Passamaquoddy, the Mi'kmaq, the Malecite, the English, all the people of New Brunswick could live and work in peace and harmony and respect for one another. The Commissioner of Official Languages Office was created more than 30 years after the Official Languages Act, and the Commissioner was appointed at that time. In recent years, it has become increasingly apparent that the policies, regulations, and initiatives taken by this office and its current Commissioner have failed in their mission. A little more than a decade later, the office created, I believe, in 2003, we find all too often that thousands of New Brunswickers believe that many of these policies and initiatives have been divisive, unfair, and wasteful, breeding ill will and stereotypings individuals and groups. In New Brunswick, we have to live in complete respect of one another. We have to set the bar higher, because we're better than that. Earlier this month, the head of one of the largest public service unions, CUPE, referred to the agents of this office as being described as the language police. It was in response to yet another story of a New Brunswicker being fired because they were not bilingual in a job they'd been working for years without any complaint. Public servants are worried about the security of their jobs and about the language police that may be checking up on them, doing a language audit, sneaking up on them just around the corner. New Brunswick people as a whole, province-wide, have witnessed the growing aggressiveness of this office and its commissioner for long enough. There is a concern that millions of dollars of taxpayers' money is being wasted on the duplication of public service in order to fill arbitrary language quotas. Martin Luther King Jr., in his famous speech in Washington, made this statement: "I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." New Brunswickers, I've got a similar dream. I got a dream that my 4 little children, all of yours, will live in a province where they will not be judged by the languages they speak, but by the quality of their character. When elected Premier of New Brunswick, lorsqu'il a été élu Premier ministre de Nouveau-Brunswick, I promise you that my government will give priority and move quickly to bring harmony and respect and reasonable policies to every part of this province, regardless of language or culture. And then there is a fiscal challenge. This situation has only become greater in recent years, and successive governments have not worked in the public's interest to solve it. Instead, they've decided to protect the status quo. In order to win the next election, and the results speak for themselves, we've had 2 one-term governments in a row, and there's another one on its way. The last 2 governments increased the debt by about $2 billion each, and the current one is well on its way to even shattering these numbers. Our current debt is over $13 billion and climbing. That means every one of us owes $17,000 or $18,000 to the bank for mismanagement and bad decisions made by these governments. Closely related to the challenge of cleaning up the fiscal mess is the challenge of creating opportunity and growing the economy, which has been stagnant for most of our recent history. Point in case, there were 12 mills from McGivney to Chatham 15 years ago. There's 2 today that are in operation. We now have fewer New Brunswickers working in the province than we had 10 years ago. Last year, we lost 6,800 more jobs, and as we know, thousands of New Brunswickers exit the province every month, week, and every year to find work. The result is they build lives elsewhere, they get married elsewhere, their kids are elsewhere, our population declines, our school enrollment declines, and we have far too much negativity surrounding all of this. We need to change the page in New Brunswick, and we can do it. We're going to do it. New Brunswick governments over the years have spent millions of dollars annually, taxpayers' money, your money, to provide risk capital to businesses that were unable to secure it privately because their deals were too risky. Their projects and business cases were bad. They could never work. Governments have provided millions of taxpayers' dollars to multi-million-dollar corporations who took it simply because it was there for the taking. It was too easy. Come to New Brunswick. We don't want to come. Oh, don't worry. We'll fly you here. We'll even take over your payroll. Come to New Brunswick, we'll pay for the whole thing. And then the government will run out and get a photograph and say, look at the jobs we created. They didn't create anything. They just used your money to get a photograph taken and everybody pays for it, and everybody leaves.